Broadcasting live on the UnitedWest.org AM radio network and simulcasting on DirecTV, iHeartRadio, Roku, and the World Wide Web. This is Enemies of the State with Tom Trento.
All right. Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Tom Trento Show and Enemies of the State. My name is Damon Rosen, and maybe some of you are used to hearing me from the other side of the glass. But Tom and Mark are on special assignment today, so I am going to be your host on Enemies of the State. Happy Monday. It's about 6 minutes after 4 o'clock on Monday the 27th. You're listening to 740 WSBR Radio in the Southeast Florida area, and also 1010 WHFS up in Tampa Bay. I'd like to say hello to our terrorist friends Hassan Shibli and Ahmed Badir up in Tampa. Hello, you civilizational jihadists and cultural, you know what you are. Anyway, we got a pretty special show for you today. We're going to have a guest, the map man, Mark Langfan, who is an attorney in New York and whose accomplishments are entirely too long for me to list. But if you just Google Mark Langfan, you will see a number of publications and maps, topographical maps. He is a security analyst, a topographer, an attorney, and a real big Zionist. So we have that over the weekend. First of all, we'd like to give our sympathies to the families and victims of the earthquake in Nepal. I think last I heard the death toll was over 3,500, with countless others injured and missing. So our prayers and thoughts are with the people of Nepal, and a speedy recovery for what it's worth. Also in the news, we had Baltimore going wild over the weekend with the riots over the Freddie Gray death while in police custody. Nothing says reform the police department like smashing up police cars and making sure the Baltimore Orioles game can't be, patrons can't leave the game under mayoral order because there are wild people rioting in the streets of Baltimore. Congratulations, Baltimore. Excellent job. What else was big over the weekend was Hillary Clinton getting grilled on the Clinton Foundation's funds, mixing government, private, and all over the place. 85% goes for personal expenses. It's a joke. What, if anything, will ever stick to this woman? She makes John Gotti look like bubble gum. I mean, stuff sticks to him more than her, and he was known as the Teflon Don. So it's good to see Hillary taking a little bit of beating in the press. You know, will it continue? Will it get to the other networks outside of Fox? I don't know, but it seems between the Uranium One deal and the Clinton Foundation commingling of public and private funds might be the beginning of Hillary's downfall. Also, more pertinent to today's show and what we're going to discuss with Mark Langfan, Israel over the weekend had a couple of incidences to the north. They took out allegedly took out some long-range surface-to-surface missiles destined for Hezbollah in Syria, and then also more recently, the IDF shot 4 terrorists planting bombs on the Israel side of the border with Syria in the Golan Heights. So things are heating up in the north, a place that Tom Trento and the United West team was not even a month ago, right up in that same area. So for anyone interested in coming to Israel with us next year on a geopolitical tour of the hot spots of Israel, the Gaza Strip, the border with Lebanon, Syria, into Judea and Samaria, March 14th, 2016. Come with us. For information, you can email damon@theunitedwest.org or tom@theunitedwest.org. Also over the weekend, and this pertains directly to what we'll be discussing with our guest, and that is the Iranian military cargo ships that were destined to resupply the Houthi rebels in Yemen actually turned back due to the presence of US naval ships, both an aircraft carrier and a destroyer and several other battleships. So Iran actually turned back. Obama and the U.S. actually showed a little bit of cojones, and it's good to see. But as our guest will tell you, is this Obama's latest red line, aka his red line in Syria? And his article featured in the Israel National News is entitled Obama's Latest Red Line, Blockade of Iranian Arms Supply to Yemen. With that, I am going to walk over to the Great Wall of the West with my computer, and we are going to bring in today's guest, Mr. Mark Langfan. Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Good. Can you turn Mark up just a touch, I think, Michael? You know better than me. Thanks for joining us today. I appreciate you coming in and being my guest without Tom being here. Greatly appreciated, Mark.
Well, thanks for having me, and we love Tom, and we miss Tom.
Yes, we do. Well, he is on a secret assignment of much importance, so we'll tell you about that a little bit after the show, probably. Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know I told the crowd you're an attorney, you're a topographer, you're a security analyst. Tell us about being honored by the ZOA and some of the other organizations that you're involved with.
Well, the basic idea was about 27 years ago, I came up with this concept that in order to understand a lot of what people are talking about in the news, you got to understand the topography, meaning where the mountains are. So
yeah,
I had made an earlier topographic map of Israel, but then I migrated into creating and explaining and using topographic maps of the Middle East and of everywhere. So understanding the mountains is the key to really understanding what's going on.
Yeah, I can tell you, I made my very first trip to Israel last month. We just got back, I think, 3 weeks ago. And for someone who has never been there, to go up into the Golan Heights, to just see what the border with Lebanon, you really do realize how integral these strategic positions are to the survival of Israel. I mean, to
Absolutely.
give up the Golan Heights would be suicidal. If you see how narrow Israel is, at its narrowest point, what's it, 9 miles? Is that right, Mark?
9 miles.
9
yes.
miles wide. 9 miles is nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yep. Essentially it's the bottom of Manhattan to the top of Manhattan.
Right.
Is about 9 miles.
So for those people,
That's the width of the whole country.
yeah. So for those people looking for Israel to further concede land for, quote, peace with people,
It's land for suicide.
it's absolutely, absolutely suicidal. Mark, I want to bring up your article that I'd mentioned in the introduction. And here it is. If you could go ahead and bring that graphic up for a second on the computer. It's your op-ed in the Israel National News, and it is called Obama's Last Red Line, Blockade of Iranian Weapons to Yemen. Could you go? There you go.
Now, there's an important difference in the word. Earlier in the show, you had said latest. And
Last.
I specifically wrote last
Right.
red line. And there's a reason why this is going to be the last red line, in that one way or another, if Obama sticks to the red line, there's going to be for sure some type of conflagration with Iran. And if he lets the red line become a pink line into a green line, you could be sure there's going to be a war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So one way or another, the rubber is going to hit the pavement on this one. It's not going to be like the last red line where Assad's getting out of using chemical weapons to genocidally murder people.
No, it's not. You know, what was so amazing about that was Obama went on record calling it a red line countless times, and then when that red line was crossed, he came and repeatedly said that it wasn't his red line, it was the world's red line, when in fact it was Barack Hussein Obama that drew that red line and not the world. I wonder, I'm curious, do you think he's going to call the Russians in to bail him out of this deal with Iran and Yemen?
No, this one is really out of his hands, and the reason why it's out of his hands is if you go to the map behind me, you can actually see Yemen.
Okay, for the radio listening audience that cannot see this, Yemen is on the heel of the boot of Saudi Arabia. That's what we're talking about. Yemen is on the heel of the boot, okay? And it is extremely, extremely close to the coast of Africa. Go ahead, Mark. That's for the radio audience.
Well, actually, up here, this is really East Africa. This is the African continent over here, and this is the Saudi Arabian Peninsula. Now, the key here is this area right here. It's the western part of the country. That's where 80% of the people live. And if you see, this is a whole huge string of mountains that actually is extending from this whole line of mountains to the very end of the peninsula. And the reason why this is so critical is because if you look at this part of Yemen, there's a Shiite part and a Sunni part.
Right.
The Shiites are essentially in this northern aspect, right in these mountains right here, and the Sunnis are essentially in the south. So the Saudis have a problem. It's going to be very, very difficult for them to attack south into what is a sort of a mini Afghanistan, if you will, where you've got mountains, and it's very difficult to send troops into a mountainous area. Especially the Saudi troops are not, one would say, battle hardened.
No. I have your map, Mark. I have your map that shows the Shia-Sunni concentration population. Michael, could you bring up the graphic on my computer real quick?
Yes,
and Mark, would you go ahead and explain?
Yeah, you can see the black area right on that bottom aspect, on the southern aspect. If you transposed that black area onto this topographic map here, you'd see that black area essentially traces this mountainous area right over here.
So for the radio audience, what he's saying is the Yemeni coast, essentially, and then moving inland, is mountainous and packed with Shias.
Right.
The Sunni, the opposition to the Saudi Arabian Sunnis for 1,400 years.
So now, so what that really means is while the Saudis are bombing the Houthis, there is a very small chance that the Saudis are actually going to inject ground troops southward from what is their border, because this is Saudi Arabia.
Right.
So the natural approach would be to attack south. But since the Houthis are very familiar with their terrain, and they're ensconced in those mountains, it is a fool's errand to attack them in what is their strongest defensive position.
And that's why you called it somewhat of a mini Afghanistan, because the Afghani Taliban were known for using their mountainous strongholds for both hiding and for strategic firing on the enemies. Us,
exactly.
Essentially.
So what this really translates it to is some type of not a quick war where there's going to be an invasion by Saudi Arabia and Egypt of this area. It really envisages more of a war of attrition where the Saudis hope to roll back the Shia, the Iranian proxies Shia, by using the Sunni-dominated areas and stabilizing them and turning them into pro-Saudi military areas that will then effectively box in the Houthis with the indigenous Sunnis that are there, rather than going in and actually physically occupying.
So it's more of a containment strategy, so to speak.
It's more of a containment strategy, which brings us to the core of the issue, which is you are not going to be able to contain the Houthis if Iran is sending in weapons.
Wait, is that the same Iran that we're in nuclear negotiations with right now?
Oh yeah, it's the same Iran that Obama has been giving various countries to, and in fact, this is a prime example of Obama was in effect trying to give Yemen to Iran.
Now realize, folks,
but Saudi Arabia got in the way.
Yeah, realize Iran since 1979 has not been, let alone an ally. We don't even have an embassy there. We don't deal with them. The Saudis, in name, of course, because we all know the Saudis are probably the world's #1 sponsor of terrorism. Iran is the #1 state sponsor, but if you look at dollars, Saudi, the oil money of Saudi funds a lot of terrorism. But the Saudis have theoretically been our friends for decades, and we are giving Iran their nemesis, a country on the heel. Basically, if you don't look at a map, Yemen looks like it's part of Saudi Arabia.
Right, but it gets even worse. In today's Washington Post, it says there's a little dispute between the Saudis and the Obama administration.
I would imagine
on Yemen.
so.
What's this little dispute? Okay, the little dispute is Saudi Arabia believes Iran is a terrorist state that is causing all of this sectarian violence and arming the Houthis, and they want to rid Yemen of any Iranian influence. But the administration, the Obama administration, or should I say at this point the Obama regime, has basically said, no, Saudi Arabia. Iran is not the cause of problems. They're a stakeholder in Yemen.
Yes, because...
So you've got this, which brings us to the real reason why I said it's the last red line, and that when Obama let drop the red line to Assad, nothing really happened. The other shoe didn't drop.
The world looked at that and said, you know what? This guy doesn't mean anything he says. And in a region of the world where it's strong horse, weak horse,
right,
we proved to be the weak horse, and what nation is going to ride with the weak horse?
But this is the punchline on the shoe, on the dropping of the other shoe in the Yemen situation. If Obama lets the blockade of Yemen drop and allows Iranian military and military cargo ships into Aden, Saudi Arabia is not just going to sit there and say, "Oh, isn't that nice?"
No, they're not.
Okay, they are going to most likely be faced. They're going to be faced with the following reality: either they are going to bomb the Iranian ships, where there will be a hot war between Iran and Saudi Arabia, or they'll allow the ships to dock and unload all of their weapons, which basically means the past month of bombing
Was for nothing.
was for nothing and goes out the window.
Now,
So it's either I don't mean to be crude, but blank or get off the pot on this one.
right. Now, basically, these Iranian ships did turn back this time. That correct?
Okay, well, turn back is always a relative term.
Yeah, when you're that close.
The Iranians have a different take on it. In their newspapers, they actually said they sent another convoy. It's not clear exactly where these ships are. They may have turned back into the Gulf of Aden, which is over here. But it's not certain whether they've turned back and gone back to Iran. So they could just be hanging out here in this area in the Gulf of Aden until they get orders or until something is better defined.
Now, this is something you touched on in your article. Let's put these two things together. Let's put the Iranian influence in Yemen with the nuclear negotiations. You tell me how they play off of each other in the minds of the Iranians.
It's very simple. What happened is Obama has been on a one-man giving countries to Iran as really almost as a crazy down payment for this nuclear deal, in that he walked out of Iraq.
On
early in
how
his
many
administration.
thousands of American troops' lives, how many thousands and thousands of U.S. troops gave limbs and other sorts of brutal injuries for this administration to walk out of Iraq without a status of forces agreement and hand Iraq to the Iranians. Hand it over.
It's actually much more evil than that, because when you actually get into the derivation of the Islamic State did not happen in a vacuum. The Islamic State, if you look at Iraq, again, there's basically two parts to Iraq. There's the Shiite part, which is in the east and close to Iran, of course, which is
I'm going to
Shia.
go ahead and pull up the, Mike, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the Shia Sunni map one more time here. Make that, there you go. Go ahead.
So
and,
you can see basically 99.9% of all ethnic groups follow one of two things: either a river or a mountain range.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at that, if you look at the black area on your map in Iraq, you'll see that basically traces out the Euphrates.
Right over here.
Over here, this is the Euphrates.
Okay.
And
Switch that input
remember,
back.
we're talking about here the Euphrates is over here. Now we're talking about Mesopotamia. Now, what does Mesopotamia mean? It is the land between the rivers.
Tigris
And
and
so
Euphrates.
you have the cradle of civilization, which I'm going to put this map up so we'll get a better idea of it. This is
That's
a
why they
map
call
where you
you the
can really
map
get
man.
a better feeling for Mesopotamia and where the rivers come from in Mesopotamia, which then will clue us into the Shiite-Sunni divide in Iraq. Here you have the mountains of Turkey, up here.
Okay.
where you have mountains and you have rain, water goes down the side of the mountain. And that's exactly how you get the headwaters of the Tigris and the Euphrates, from the Turkish mountains in the north. So you have the Euphrates, which is on the westerly aspect, and you have the Tigris, which is on the easterly aspect. And it is between these two rivers where you see this green area, which is called the cradle of civilization, or Mesopotamia.
I wonder if they still teach that in public schools.
They teach that in public, but the thing is, if you don't see it in a mountain, you don't know where the rivers come from. You don't know where the rivers are going to. And
Mark,
of course,
I don't think most kids could find Iraq on a map.
I think a lot of people find maps boring.
I think it's this, like you said earlier.
But I think they find it boring because they're flat maps and they don't really have a character to them.
Right, you can't understand the geopolitics without understanding the photography. That's why your work is so phenomenal.
Yeah.
What's your website?
My website is just my name, marklangfan.com.
Okay, keep going on the Tigris-Euphrates.
Okay, so you got this, and by the way, got to have a little ad, an anti-ad. I mean, the crazy thing is Tom Friedman writes these op-eds for the New York Times, and his famous book is "The World Is Flat," and it's the biggest idiocy that there ever was. The world is not flat, for God's sakes. I mean, the world was flat before Christopher Columbus.
Well, if you read
the
Thomas
world is
Friedman,
not flat.
If you read Thomas
the world
Friedman,
is really not flat.
You can believe that he thinks the world is flat.
He thinks the world is flat. I mean, it's like he's being metaphorical, but the metaphor is actually idiotic.
Absolutely.
But now let's get to the heart of this. Is the heart of the beast. Okay. So you have the Tigris and you have the Euphrates to the west. But this is where the most important aspect of the entire world is, right in between these two rivers. If you look at the shape that these rivers form, meaning to the northeast and to the southwest, and you take this triangle piece, okay, and you proceed to put this triangle right on that area, what happens is, in fact, for some reason, people say it's the cradle of civilization. It may have been the cradle of life many, many millions of years ago. Because what I'm showing you with this triangle, if we go back to the other map, and I take this same triangle, and I trace out the Tigris and Euphrates area, what I have just shown you is what I call the black gold triangle.
Can you pull up the black gold triangle, Michael? Go to my computer.
Sure enough.
There you have it, Mark. Go ahead and explain that.
The black gold triangle, if you look at this, the map, what I've done is I took a famous Azadi map off the internet, and I did something simple. I traced a triangle.
Flip it back, Mike, please.
Over this area, okay, on his map. And his map shows where all of the oil and gas is in the Middle East. Okay?
Wow. And for the radio listening audience, that triangle is showing all of the oil within that triangle of Mesopotamia. If you extend it out to the south and east,
into the Persian Gulf.
You'll see all the oil reserves are located on the southern end of Iran and on the, I guess it'd be the northeastern area of Saudi Arabia, all along the Persian Gulf, down into the United Arab Emirates. Go ahead and flip back to Mark.
The reason why this is so critical is when people say, oh, Saudi Arabia has a ton of oil and gas. It actually doesn't have a ton of oil and gas. Only the northeastern 10% of Saudi Arabia has oil and gas. The rest of Saudi Arabia has no oil and gas. All of the oil and gas is right in this area. Similarly, for Iran, Iran has so much oil and gas? No, only this one area,
Now,
Ahwaz, has oil and gas. The rest of Iran, the easterly part of Iran has very, very little oil and gas. So it's only concentrated, and the same thing for Iraq. It's really in this triangle area, which goes up to the foothills of what is the Zagros Mountains.
Right.
And the Zagros Mountains is this very, very high mountain range that forms the western aspect of Iran.
So let me ask you this, Mark, and I think is this more about the oil, or is this more about the Sunni-Shia fight? Is this more religious-based or economic-based?
My belief is the entire fight is over this black gold triangle.
Now,
That's what it, because you have Iran here, and you have the Arabs and the Sunnis to the west. And this is the heart of the beast, because my belief is it's not even a Shiite-Sunni battle. What I believe is that you have 75 million Iranians to the east. You have 200 million Arabs in the Arabian Peninsula, Syria, and Egypt, in this about 200 million. And the Iranians aren't stupid.
no, they're not.
And what they're doing is they're saying, we want the oil under this black gold triangle. But in order to get the oil, we have to destroy the Arabs. Well, how do you destroy the Arabs? Well, you can't destroy the Arabs frontally, meaning Iran just can't march west and say, I'm keeping all the oil. Because the Arabs would say, you must be kidding me.
And then the United States would also be forced to go in and defend Saudi Arabia as well.
Right. So instead of frontally attacking 200 million Arabs as an ethnic group, the Saudis have come up with this theory of inciting a sectarian genocidal war between the Arab Sunnis and the Arab Shia. And if you look, for instance, in Syria, there's very, very few Iranians that Iran is sending into Syria to die for Assad.
Well, there have been some reports of IRGC deaths. Not a ton.
Very, very few. Who have they sent into Syria to die?
Hezbollah.
Afghans, Shiite Afghans, and Hezbollah. Hezbollah are Arabs, so
Right.
they're a little bit on the stupid side because they're being fomented by Iran on this Shia pretext. But in reality, what's going on, as well as in Yemen, is Iran is effectively weakening the Arab cohesion and destroying them from within so that they can, after enough Arabs have been killed by each other, they'll walk into the oil areas.
So they're basically pitting the Arab Shias against the Arab Sunnis, letting them kill each other off to make it easier for the Iranians to walk in and take the oil fields of northeastern Saudi Arabia.
Exactly.
Now,
And
I've heard some
there's
people
a simple
say...
proof of this. There's a simple proof of this for anyone who's interested. Okay? That simple proof is Google Ahwaz and genocide. Those two words. Okay? Ahwaz is this area right here that I showed you. That's the Iranian oil area. Now, the spelling is A-H-V-A-Z. Okay? Now, remember, this area has Shiite Arabs. So one would say, oh, Iran treats the Shiites in Ahwaz beautifully because they're Shiites.
Here's the first thing that I saw. Tehran committing genocide against ethnic Arabs in Ahwaz.
You got it.
Okay.
Ding, 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 ding. Okay. It turns out that not all Shiites are created equal. All right? This is a classic Orwellian case of Animal Farm. Okay? The Iranians are using the Shiite religion as an incendiary to cause a self-inflicted genocide by the Arab Shiites on the Sunnis and by the Shiite Sunnis on the Shiite Arabs.
So let me ask you
And
this.
the key point here, let me just give you, so what they're saying by that genocide, that Tehran genocide against the Ahwaz Arabs, you see, this is the Zagros. So the Zagros is really the divider between the ethnic Persians and to the east and the Arabs to the west. And so this Ahwaz area, of course, has Shiite Arabs. And what are the Iranians or the Persian Iranians doing to the Ahwaz? They're damming the rivers that come from the mountains into Ahwaz to stop all the water so that the Arab Shiites don't have any water. And so they have to go, they have to leave. Now, why do the Persians want the Arab Shiites? Why are they inflicting a genocide and why are they wanting them to leave? Because remember, that's where all the oil is. And they want to push the Shiite Arabs off of the oil.
To put in the Persian.
To put
Shia.
in the Persians. So that there's, this is, so the
So
whole
this is
point
more
here,
ethnic than religious, is what you're saying.
this is totally an ethnic war of the Persians who want to reconstruct the grand Persian Empire, which encompasses this entire area and then some. Remember, why do you have if you watch the movie The 300? What was going on in the 300? Well, believe it or not, the Persians were schlepping all the way, even past here, into Greece to attack Greece, okay, which is past here. So the Persians were going all the way. This was all Persia.
So
and
they've
they
got a
want
little
to-
history of going around things to get to them.
Right. So again, so the point is the goal of, so if you understand that this is where all the oil is and that all of this fighting is over this oil, number one, this has nothing to do with Israel particularly, except that all of a sudden Israel becomes a geostrategic point of power and of power projection that defies any quantification
Now,
or
that's one
qualification.
thing that's come about here is you see, I mean, there are multiple reports of Saudi intelligence officials meeting with Israeli military. And I'm not sure about the other Gulf Arab states, but I know, I mean, we've heard multiple news stories.
There's all of a sudden, you see the contiguity of interest in Israel not having the Iranians defeat the Arabs.
Of course.
So you're seeing, in effect, the beginning of an entente and of a mutual protection and defense of the moderate Shiites, the moderate Sunnis with Israel forming what is the core of this area right here, including Jordan and Saudi Arabia and even, of course, Egypt.
Well, nothing could bring the Israel and the Saudis together like Obama's foreign policy.
Oh, yeah, no, that's exactly it, because he's so pro-Iranian that it defies any imagination. So here you have a total contiguity of interests between Israel and Saudi Arabia, who are both getting betrayed by Obama.
Yes, two allies being offered up for the hopes of signing a deal with a rogue nation known as the largest state sponsor of terrorism. Where does that make sense that you offer up the security and the relationships with two allies like that for a rogue nation? When has that ever worked?
I can't really think of any. I mean, people like to call him a Chamberlain. And I say, why insult Chamberlain?
Your father actually
made
a very good comparison.
Chamberlain.
Your father did a very good comparison. In fact,
yes, but the thing is, my father did a comparison 2 years ago.
True.
We've moved past Chamberlain. We're way past Chamberlain.
Yeah.
This is Chamberlain. Just imagine Chamberlain giving a nuclear bomb to Adolf Hitler.
Right. This is essentially what's going on. Only
that is the analogy is not a situation where you have Czechoslovakia and you have a war where the war turned out reversible. The war turned out that we reversed Hitler. The question is, if Iran has a nuclear weapon or a bunch of nuclear weapons, how are we ever going to reverse them, for God's sake?
Especially when their 12-er ideology requires an end-time scenario. So mutually assured destruction, which worked with the Soviets in the Cold War, does not apply to the Iranians. Because if you told them, we'll swap you, you're going to lose 90% of your population, they'd sign up for that. Whereas every other rational government in the world says we're not going to do that. It's not mutually
assured destruction, it's assured destruction. Because their concept of dying for what they are doing is it's an inducement. It's not an impediment.
Exactly. They want death. Listen, when you're dealing with people that continually say, we love death more than you love life, you cannot let them get nuclear arms. Cannot do it. Now, a lot of people, Mark, have said this is not just about the oil, but it's about control of Mecca and Medina. Do you have an opinion on that?
In law school, I had a tax teacher and a tax law teacher. And he said one thing that always stuck in my memory. Follow the money.
True.
Okay. Follow the money. Because this is the key. Saudi Arabia is really composed of this two parts. It's composed of the oil region in the northeast. And
Right
then
on
it's
the
got the
Persian
more
Gulf.
populous regions in the west, which is where Mecca and Medina is. Now, the only reason why you have Saudi Arabia being Saudi Arabia is because of this northeastern oil. If Iran controlled that northeastern oil, who would care about Saudi Arabia?
No one.
Nobody, because they wouldn't have the money.
True.
Whoever's got the oil has got the money.
Whoever has the money controls the population. Whoever
Whoever's
controls
got
the
the money
population
controls
controls Mecca and
everything.
Medina.
Right. So even if, and you have to remember that one of the reasons why this Houthi thing is such a hoot for the Saudis is because Sena and this whole Houthi area here is like about 500 miles from Mecca. Right
not
to
too
the
far.
to the north.
Not
So
too far.
so they could theoretically attack this way as well. But the real key is whoever controls this northeastern patch of oil controls the world.
Now, so Mark Langfan says this is about the money, not necessarily the Shia Sunni. It's more ethnic, meaning Persian versus Arab.
Right.
Trumping the Shia Sunni. And
No, not trumping.
money trumping
not
it
trumping.
all.
Exploiting the Shia Sunni battle, which is in effect trumping it, but really, I mean, I personally, you look at the wars between Shia and Sunni over history.
1,400 years of it.
Yeah, but it's not. I mean, it's a little. Yes, there's Shia Sunni tension, but to the degree where you have these people massacring each other and using poison gas against each other, this takes a special instigation, in my view, that is coming directly and solely from Iran.
Gotcha. Another thing that we didn't get into on the show is not just with the Houthis and taking over Yemen. It's not just a means to attack Saudi Arabia. It also gives control of the Red Sea, going up to the Suez Canal.
You have to remember something. This is a long-term plan for Iran. That's step number one. Now, remember, what's their specific goal? Their specific goal is this. Okay? So, in essence, once you say, well, this is what I'm really shooting for, and you focus a strategy on achieving that, all of a sudden, the Mandab Straits become very important. The reason why the Mandab Straits become very important is because if there were ever an Iranian attack against Saudi Arabia, there are two choke points from the Mediterranean Sea to the Gulf of Aden to the Gulf of Oman into this area here, which is, of course, the Persian Gulf. The two choke points are, of course, the Suez Canal and the Mandab Straits.
And how wide is the Mandab Straits there?
It's about 10 miles or so.
Okay, so very easily blockadable.
Oh, very easily, but it's not just the Mandab Straits. You see, it's the whole coast of Yemen that funnels into the Mandab Strait.
So basically, Iran could shut down access to the Suez Canal for anyone they wanted to if they had full control of Yemen.
Yes, and this is the reason why. People will say, oh, well, I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was reading a question and answer of the Pentagon spokesperson.
Oh, God.
And the question was, well, the Houthis don't have any ships. How can they threaten shipping through the Mandab Straits if they don't have any? This is reporters in the Pentagon.
I don't know. How about look at a map and see that it's only 10 miles
Okay.
10 miles wide.
No, but this is the key. It's not just that the Mandab Straits is 10 miles wide. That's the least of it. Okay. The reason is if Yemen, if through the Houthis, Iran developed fortifications in this westerly aspect of Yemen, they can install anti-ship missiles called the Ghadir missiles. Ghadir is a special event in Islamic law where Muhammad invested Ali with the custodianship, essentially, of Islam.
Not if you're Sunni.
That's not a good day for that's the Sunnis don't exactly abide by that
Right.
theory. Okay, so what happens is these missiles, which were essentially co-developed with the Chinese, they were taken from Chinese technology, and the Iranians actually developed a very, very competent and capable anti-ship missile. And they didn't name it the Ghadir lightly. There are only two Iranian weapon systems that are named after the Ghadir event. One is these anti-ship missiles that have a range. If you look at my map, this from here to here is essentially 300 miles. So if you, let me use another show.
I believe in the article, I remember I read 300 kilometer.
It's 300 kilometers. It's about 180 miles.
Right.
So on the range of those missiles is about this far. I'll put it like this.
Okay.
About this far. Okay. So if you take this and you put it over here,
you could shoot across the whole.
You see, the Mandab Straits is the least of the problem.
No, you could shoot clear into Africa, no problem.
This entire funnel, which funnels into the Mandab Straits from the very top of the northern aspect of Yemen, if Iran were to install these anti-ship missiles into this corridor, it would be impassable.
Impassable. So no access to the Suez Canal. The Red Sea would
off this whole.
The Red Sea would be completely controlled by Iran. Mark, I have 2 minutes to go in the show. I have 2 minutes to go in the show. Give me your big idea in the next minute.
Big idea on what?
On everything. What do we have to do? Is this the end times?
The payoff on everything I've just said is the following. Why is the blockade so vital of Yemen? Because the Iranians can smuggle these sucker anti-ship missiles in.
And pester U.S. military vessels, commercial shipping.
U.S. or Saudi or Egyptian ships that are trying to interdict this blockade.
So basically, if this blockade, if Iran gets control of Yemen, they can blockade the Mandab Straits, take control of the Red Sea, eliminate any availability of the Suez Canal, take over the oil of Saudi Arabia, and the world is a totally different place than it is today.
But the one point is not just if they take over Yemen, it's if they're allowed to run the blockade and bring now into Yemen these missiles that the Houthis and the Iranian Republican Guards can use to further break the blockade. That's the key point.
Very bad.
So these are game-changing weapons that if Iran can bring the Ghadir into Houthi-controlled areas in Yemen, they'll tear up the blockade.
Yep. All right, Mark, thank you very much for coming on the show. I think you gave the crowd quite the education on the importance of Yemen and the Iranian connection. I'd like to thank you very much, and we look forward to having you.
Thank you, Damon, for having me, and I say hello to everybody, and Tom,
Great.
we love you and miss you.
All right. Mark, thanks
Thank
a
you,
lot.
Damon.
Radio audience, thank you very much. This is Damon Rosen signing off for Tom Trento and Enemies of the State. Have a great day.